In a matter of minutes, Bitcoin has dropped 8%. It's given us our first flash crash below the 50% level, going from roughly 44,000 down to 40,000. We also saw altcoins get obliterated through this period. Is this the beginning of the end for this current altcoin season? I'm going to answer those questions in today's video and, of course, compare this with the macro cycle. Where do we sit? Is this the last alt season or do we have more to come? Stay with us, hit the like and subscribe. You guys are doing amazingly well. We're nearly at our target of 300,000 before the end of the year. So much appreciated to you guys and to all the new people joining the journey here. Linked in the video description. We'll talk about that later. The main thing we want to have a look at today is this flash crash at the 50% level and how this is affecting cryptocurrencies, altcoins, the alt season. Is it finally over? I'm going to look at that with the TA in today's video. First things first, let's have a look at the liquidations in the last hour. We have $291 million of longs liquidated. This is the same price or the same amount of liquidations as there was about a month ago now in November. So basically, by the time we get to the end of this hour, possibly it's going to be the biggest liquidations in the last 3 months of this particular data and potentially even longer. We have had a lot of greed to the upside, at least in the short term, where investors are hoping and thinking and praying that the prices are going to continue up. And we have definitely seen that in the comments section on YouTube with the likes of a lot of discussion around altcoins, saying that these particular alts have got further to go, more and more upside. That is a key idea and a key thesis that comes into the peaks of these markets. So let's just take it back one step very briefly for the new guys and for anyone that is continuing to follow along to understand the macro cycle here. This is the real estate and economic cycle. I'll explain more in a moment. Essentially, we are still in this stage going up in the macro sense here. We're looking at the years here. We have a long way to go, which just means that we're going to see more pullbacks, more corrections, and more pumps along the way to the upside. So just trying to bring down the fear and the emotion and the FOMO and all that sort of stuff, because even though we may get a pullback, as I discussed in the videos on Friday in particular, doesn't mean that this particular altcoin season, or at least altcoins in general, are completely over and we all missed out. I think what we're building up to is that higher low, or that next significant higher low for altcoins, which can take several weeks, potentially a few months. And I've got that info to cover with you in just a moment as well. So now that we've covered that, this is the macro cycle, the thing that controls absolutely everything that goes on in the world of real estate and economics. So essentially everything that we live and die by, the cycle is still up. So we are just experiencing some swings up and down. And I suspect in the shorter term, we have a top that we're looking to reach for Bitcoin and altcoins. You can see that this was one of the biggest hourly bars that we have seen in the entire move to the upside. You can see the volume here was extreme and it's come back down and flushed out a lot of the pricing here. Now, that doesn't mean that this entire move is over, but as we've been pointing out, this particular move, which has lasted 8 straight weeks up so far, is likely coming to an end in terms of a pause or maybe a little further to go to the upside. We've looked at our targets as well to the upside here of roughly $48,000, which is the monthly swing top, a very key area that the Bitcoin market has to overcome. Whether it does it now and then consolidates above or later is not the point. The main thing is I think we're probably running out of steam here, which I've alluded to. And yes, I do look at it on a longer term time frame here, not the shorter term stuff, the degen shit where we're looking at minutes and hours. If you've got a plan and you're doing well, fantastic. But for the majority of people, they are hoping to get in at a bigger discount and then ride that up for the next sort of several months, potentially, as we wait for that next altcoin season. Speaking of which, that is what we looked at in this video here, going back just a few days. So you can go back and check that one out yourself. That's the title here. In a macro sense, everything has been blowing up. We've been looking at all-time highs coming into these stock markets. Risk appetite is going bananas. And I think it's going to continue doing that, as I pointed out, with the real estate cycle here as we continue to see things going up. So the big thesis that I was talking about in this video is what happens to Bitcoin at the 50% level And guess what? Well, on the weekly chart, we saw a close above the 50%. Right now, it's very early days in the new week, only a few hours actually. So we still have 6 days and 21 hours to go. But this might be some signs that the market wants to eventually close under the 50% or maybe have a little bit further of a push to get to that $48,000. Now, I know that doesn't sit well with a lot of people. They're like, just tell me the answer. No one knows the answer. It doesn't matter where you go, there is not going to be an answer that is guaranteed to work. What I think the answer is, based on my own analysis, is I don't think there is much to go in this movement to the upside. So even if it hit 48 or 50, maybe comes back and tests these tops here at 52, when you look at it in terms of a percentage from where we were last week at 44, it's about 10% to the upside. Or maybe if you go to the 52K level, it's 19, 20%. So it's not a lot of upside compared to the potential downside based on everything that we have gone through over the last several weeks as we have watched these markets go up, and then also over the last several months as we have watched the markets consolidate while the masses were thinking the markets were going to collapse. There was distribution patterns getting flown around. There was talks of bear market rallies and then collapses. And there was all sorts of stuff going on over the last, that sort of 7-month period between March and the breakout in October. So with everything said, looking at this as an accumulation and then the breakout, eventually, well, we know there has to be some sort of correction, and those things can take some time. Time is the big one that most people want to know about. And this is what we're looking at here when it came to time on the previous cycles. On the weekly chart here, you can see from the 2016 cycle, there was a week closing above the 50%, and the 50% here is from the entire range. There was a question about that I saw. That was the bull market top to the bear market bottom, the exact measurements here, looking at those levels, and then we look towards that 50%. It's not sort of any sort of rough guessing, it's using that exact cycle itself. So one close and then a close underneath. Took some time. There was a bit of reaccumulation before another attempt at the 50%. So from where the market broke out to the low was about 7 weeks, so just short of 2 months. Then you had several more weeks, and then you had a breakout point 19 weeks from that top. A few more weeks lasted for another reaccumulation before you then got another breakout or a significant move to the upside here, which broke that top about 27 weeks later, so 6 months. So everything is still lining up for some time in roughly mid-2024, as we've been pointing out. Probably that Q3 area is where a potential significant move is going to happen. But for now, things look like time is running out to the upside, even though the market can still go further up. It's just, I don't think it's got much to go to the upside before it does come back down. So the risk is increased, the way I look at things. Even if there is an upside, there is more downside. Too high of a risk, I'm not interested. And I suspect that's what a lot of other traders and investors are looking at now, which is why the price maybe is not pumping as much as it was earlier on. There was lower risk, but further upside potential. Going to the last cycle, you can see that the market rejected at 50%. It tried to close above, got one and then quickly back under, got another, then quickly back under, and then it took several more weeks before you could get to that point of another test, and that was around 57 weeks. So that's the big question at this point. As we look at the move to the upside, we were looking at this potentially being the first attempt at the 50% level. We got there, we talked about that for months, where the market was going up to test the 50%. Before it got there, of course, that's what we've been saying. It did get there. And even if it does go a little bit above, in the previous 2 cycles, it hasn't been able to break through and consolidate above that level. Doesn't mean it can't happen this time, but of course, all we're trying to do here is just look at what's happened in the past to forecast the future. In terms of the probabilities, it seems unlikely only based on these 2 times. However, if it does break above and then consolidate above these levels, then that is going to signal to us that this market is stronger than we have anticipated, where the anticipation was the market would go underneath, take a little more time, and then test the 50% again. Speaking of the testing and looking at the total cryptocurrency market caps, well, in this case, this is all of the cryptocurrencies. It does look like that the market is breaking out, and we're in that phase D of the Wyckoff schematic. I'll go into this in future videos just because of this breakout that's happened, or this flash crash that's happening on Bitcoin. I wanted to give you a bit more of an update of the possibility of the altcoin season finishing and how to measure that. So we'll get into this in another one, but essentially a lot of the indicators are saying that we won't see lower prices here for the macro picture, even if the market comes down. That's a really important point to remember, Because if this does start to come down, you will see the bears come back again. I don't think the bears will have the strength like they did at the March low or the FTX low or the lows in June and September. They won't have that sort of strength, but you will guaranteed hear those stories again. So it's really, really important to note that even though we hear those stories, that is potentially the buying opportunity, that pullback, that healthy correction to come in to buy the altcoins which you think are the stronger altcoins out there. And I want to show you that as well in this video. We're getting a long way in. So that will happen. The reason I continue to bring that up is because when we get to those low points, all we're hearing is the bad news, and that prevents us from getting in at the lower points. And then you see the market rise and go, oh crap, I've missed out. And then you start to buy as the market goes up, which is what a lot of people are doing here with Bitcoin when we've been talking about buying it at the lows and also buying it ourselves, as we mentioned to our members. So that's TIA Premium. As I did say, links are in the top of the video description there. TIA Premium, Buy-Bit-Get. And we have a live stream coming up on Wednesday morning. So if you want to get on board with that, make sure you join that before Wednesday and you'll get our weekly live streams as well. For the total cryptocurrency market cap, because of this breakout, I suspect we won't come back under these levels here of roughly $1 trillion. So keep an eye out on that as well. We look at total 3. This is all the market caps excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum. Similar sort of thing here, not as strong, but I suspect because of the move up and the amount of time to the upside now in terms of months, which is a bigger time frame, with the pullback, we are looking at a good, healthy entry point wherever that pullback may come. Remember, maybe this is the peak here in December. Maybe we start to rise a little more for January, but I'm looking at a possible top and correction sometime now in December or roughly around that January period of next year before we start to get a pullback in these cryptos because of the phenomenal run they have had. So more on that coming up in videos. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. The other piece to remember is 2024, or going from December this year to roughly late next year, December 2024, is what I think of as a year 2. So we put this together with our December forecasts. That video was done about a week ago. You can find on the channel. And in terms of year 2, typically we see a lot of Bitcoin gains move across to altcoins. You start to see altcoins pump as well. Altcoins pumping into new all-time highs, we have noted, happens towards the point where Bitcoin breaks out of its level underneath the old all-time high. So essentially, once Bitcoin breaks out into a new all-time high, is typically when we start to see altcoins go ballistic in that big altcoin season. So although I've talked about in this video the macro and then the kind of medium term, I do think we still have the big moves to come next year, and probably once Bitcoin breaks out into a new all-time high. And from that point, we could see, or sorry, from the point before that, I think we still have some sort of correction or at least pause and reaccumulation to get done in the first half of 2024. Ethereum also has had a pullback here. ETH BTC pullback as well. It's still holding this ground, but it might continue down as we have not had any higher highs or higher lows in the macro sense here. So that was just a look at ETH. But the main one I wanted to get to is Solana, because when we look at Solana, a similar sort of pattern is happening now as what happened at the peak. Now, I love talking about Solana not only because it has been a strong altcoin. Obviously, a lot of people are interested in Solana as well, but the pattern is super, super interesting. Check out what has just occurred here. Remember, in this period here, between the sort of $50s to $65, I've been talking about Solana probably coming to the end of its move. And yes, it could go up to a 50% level. And guess what it did just a couple of days ago? I mean, it touched right on it, pulled back, had another attempt. Right now, in the last couple of hours, it's pulled back. Doesn't mean it's the end, but it looks scarily similar to what happened at the peak here, just on a shorter term time frame. You can see this massive pump up here to about $220, the pullback, and then the market attempted to go higher, couldn't do it, came underneath, got rejected, and then of course, macro bear market started from that point. So the areas that I'm measuring from, and you can do this across any of your cryptocurrencies, any of the 2 million cryptos that are out there, take your pick, do the analysis, and you'll see for yourself whether your altcoin is going to make it or not. Well, look at the top here, September 2021. What I'm doing is measuring these points here where we had extreme volume for this particular move. And this extreme volume happened at the peak. That is a bearish sign. a very bearish sign, because when it happens at the peak and the market can't go any higher for a considerable amount of time there, you probably have to start to throw the probabilities on the side of the bears. So remember, scrap Solana, don't worry about the name up here, don't worry about the crypto itself. If you see charts like this is early warning signs. So it's telling you something's not right here. It pulls back, it tries to climb higher. You can see the higher lows forming. So yes, the trend is still up, and for shorter term traders who are on whatever leverage they're on, they're going to make the gains. But if you're just going for a spot trade and trying to get in on the breakouts, there's really not much left in it. When you look at it from the peak to the next peak of 20%, okay, that's only if you get in when the market breaks to a new all-time high and then get out at the exact top. You had 20% in it. But remember, to the downside, well, what did Solana do? Solana did a solid 97% loss from that peak to the absolute bottom. So there is far more downside, whatever number you want to use, whether it's 90% down or whatever, there is a lot of risk for a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of reward to the upside, because most of the reward has already been had. So if you're starting to get the picture now to try and make those 100x gains in altcoins during the mega altcoin season, these are the things you must weigh up when you're getting into the market and just having a look at what the downside could be. If you still think there's room in it, like there was early on, then make sure you just keep your stops underneath where the consolidation was. So that's some lessons that we'll look at in future videos as well. The main thing I want to look at here is this time frame, this price move to the upside, and where we currently sit with the rejection ahead, with a resistance level at 50%, now $75 there, or $76 on Solana. And then you can see what's happening right now. There's a fair bit of volume to the upside here, huge volume actually. That's massive mega volume compared to anything since the collapse of FTX. So that's mega volume coming in at these peaks. Guess what just happened? Well, market just slightly broke out to the upside by, you guessed it, 21%. Can this thing go higher? Yes, all that sort of stuff, all the disclaimers, okay? But we're just measuring it for now. And it's almost that it's happened very, very similar yet again. Now, it's not complete yet because this move here still has not finished. We're only 3 hours into this new day. And of course, this thing could just shoot off again, so be it. But you can start to see how those patterns form. And then you just have to think, well, maybe even if this thing does go up a little higher and come back and test 85, maybe it comes up and tests 140, the move to the upside is quite limited, even though it's 100%. Compared to the downside, because the downside can be very, very substantial on these cryptos after quite a substantial move and quite a long time to the upside. That is the main lesson here, and you can start to see how it plays out as I've been talking about, and it does take time. It's not like, look, the top's in, guys, it's going to collapse the next day. These tops take time. In this case, it's taken days, weeks. It's not even confirmed yet, but some of these things are starting to look like they could be confirmed in the coming days and weeks. And what you will look out for is the market closing underneath those previous tops, which is roughly around that sort of $63 or $64. You start to see this thing close underneath those levels. That is another nail for the bears that will eventually take control of this and shoot this thing a little further down. In the previous video, we looked at, well, how far down could it go? And we looked at targets back towards those previous resistance, which may become support at a roughly sort of 60% loss there. So keep that in mind if you are looking to enter altcoins on this dip, because yet again, the theories and the mindsets and what you'll see on YouTube and all sort of nonsense is buy the dip. And typically we see those buy the dip calls come out roughly, I think my brother Michael has measured this out, to be about 2 days of down movement. You see one day down, then a second day down, you got all the influencers telling you to buy the dip, buy the dip. They did it back here, buy the dip, buy the dip. And yeah, I mean, if you're trading it short term with leverage, with stops in play, and you're super professional at this, you're going to make money. But if you're a noob just trying to make a few gains, the risk, I think, going from $55 to $70 is, for me, just not worth it because of the potential downside. Here is your little box of reward. Here is your bigger box of risk. That's a bit of an iffy game, in my opinion. Solana BTC also having a little rejection here. Again, the day's not up and this thing could continue up, and we'll go through and do it more on this in future videos. Again, remember, this is short-term stuff, and short-term changes a lot quicker than the macro. So the macro, looking really fresh. We are still long ways to go for the real estate cycle, the stock markets, Bitcoin in general, but the correction could be the perfect time to be buying into those altcoins. So find out which of the altcoins you want to get into. I think we've got this correction coming, as I've said. More videos coming up on the channel, so make sure you hit the like and subscribe. We're nearly at 300,000. Links for TIA Premium as we go live on Wednesday to discuss all of this in far more detail across all of the macro markets. And apart from that, I'll see you guys back here at the next video. Until then, take care and peace out.